Good morning. This event actually comes out of a discussion that Peter Hirshberg and I had a year and a half ago or so. We thought that Edelman and Technorati, which is the leading blog research company, ought to be creating intellectual capital for the space. That there ought to be some form of understanding who, what, and how, so that corporations would feel comfortable in engaging with the blogosphere. When I started 2 years ago blogging, most people in my own company thought that this was a nice diversion, keep the maniac busy. In fact, it's really become a central aspect of the strategy of the company and a real core element of how we interact with our multiple stakeholders, starting with our own employees, but also our clients and other members of the PR community. So the conversation must start with what's happening in the big world, which is that the world used to be a top-down monologue based on advertising. And what's happened is the corresponding development of another axis on the graph, which is the horizontal peer-to-peer conversation. And it's really a function of lack of trust in mainstream institutions, ranging from government, business, and media. It's partly filled by civil society, but it's also increasingly filled by the voices of the average person, which is the blogosphere. Most profound is the change in the person you trust as a source of credible information. This comes from the Edelman Trust Barometer last January. Understand that more credible than doctors or academics or accountants, certainly than CEOs, is a person like yourself. This is a remarkable change from 2003, when it was only 22% in the US. The same statistics apply for Europe. You have the same rise in China, same sort of situation in Japan. The person like yourself, because you can, because of broadband, because you want to, because you trust that person more than you do hearing it from the top-down source. So our belief is the sweet spot for communications is that nexus between top-down and peer-to-peer. It's not one nor the other, it's the both. That's the thesis that we're going forward with in the company. Okay, let's go to the subject of today, which is the blogosphere. About a quarter of the population in the three key countries we've surveyed, US, UK, and France, read blogs at least once a week. Very important, the mainstream media is using the blogosphere as a source of story ideas. It used to be just those of us in PR. They would never acknowledge that, but increasingly it's the blogosphere. And in fact, blogs are being given attribution in mainstream media. In the second quarter of this year, in those three markets mentioned, US, UK, and France, in mainstream media, in large media like the New York Times, etc., there were 766 mentions of blogs as the source for stories. What's the state of the blogosphere presently? 56 million blogs. Technorati's tracking 1.2 million new posts a day. Importantly, the key languages are English, Japanese, and Chinese. Here's the logarithmic curve of acceptance. All of you bloggers have seen this multiple times. You know, of course, that blogging spikes with events. Here's the mix. Peter, do you have any comments on this mix? It's interesting that it's English, then Japanese, Chinese, and
right. The blogosphere is hardly an English language phenomenon. It bounces between U.S. and Japanese in any given month as to which the number one and number two languages are, and it grows very rapidly overseas. And the phenomenon is kind of different by country. So, for example, in the U.S., where blogging got started as kind of posts that looked about this long, there was almost an independent cinema kind of a nature of it, that there was a form of post that was kind of almost an older phenomenon. If you look in Japan, where it's much more mobile, it's a much faster, younger phenomenon. And now in the US, I think that with the growth of MySpace and things like that, the nature of blogging itself is changing. So you're looking here both at what's going on around the world and a little bit of what the demographics are within that. But certainly the rest of the world is growing faster than English at this point.
You'll also note in terms of time of day, you don't get that much of a variety, but as Peter said, at a given point in day, you see much more Japanese language, partly because they're awake and those of us in English speaking are asleep, but you see the back and forth. Okay, we have a unique partnership between Edelman and Technorati. Our goal is to help corporations understand the conversation, to find advocates and detractors, to listen first, talk second, engage in serious dialogue on a continuing basis, and this idea of empowering connection with peers. So basically, our idea is that Technorati will help us do this finding and listening. Peter, do you want to come up and describe the partnership?
So Technorati has operated in many languages to date, in that there are, if you go to technorati.com, in English you can sort and search in many languages, and you can do a search among French language blogs or Japanese blogs or Arabic blogs. But there had never been a facility that built out, well, what are the top 100 bloggers in any given country, nor was there a facility to natively search where in French, the entire experience was in French. So we started working with Edelman to build that out. Edelman wanted the ability to offer their clients the ability to zoom in each market and understand what was going on, and we were interested in building out more international sites for some of our future needs as we cruise into '07. And so this happy partnership evolved, where as we started building those things out, we worked closely with Edelman, which will be using those new sites exclusively for a few months until we make them kind of publicly available globally. So this is giving Edelman the ability to understand in any given market who are the top bloggers, what are they talking about, and having a tool that they can work with their clients and with their own teams with. This still means that throughout the world, regular Technorati continues to be able to search in any language, and we're only bringing new capabilities to the surface, but we're adding some new features that the Edelman entities can use, and that will eventually become part of the global service. So that's basically kind of how it's working. These are the languages that we actually went to work in. We've created these localized facilities working with Edelman in French, German, Italian, Korean, and Chinese. And of course, to create Korean and Chinese, there was some morphological work that had to be done so that we could further understand those character sets. And if you kind of map this to the international data you saw earlier, this is really where the blogosphere is growing most quickly. And the Edelman teams worldwide will be using these even as kind of the regular site, that the underlying data is still there for kind of anyone in the blogosphere to use. And it's really, I think, kind of an example of the importance that Edelman takes to all of this, that through a combination of using these facilities and then adding the wisdom that their local teams have together with clients, that I think they're going to be able to go deeper and provide kind of counsel in this space. One of the things that you learn in working in this space is you can pull up search results quickly, but when you're in a market and you understand the context of that market and you know who the influencers are, you're able to add a lot of value. So I think this is a combination of the kind of instantaneous global reach that we have looking at the blogosphere, some tools that we've built out that kind of supercharge what Edelman folks can do in a region, and then their own kind of contextual knowledge working with clients, and that's really the kind of the basis of what should make all this work. Hugh?
Is this information privileged for Edelman, or can anyone find this information if they go to Technorati?
So the sites that Edelman will use are privileged to Edelman. Okay. The underlying data is available to everybody. Here's what I mean. Yeah. If we do a search on Renault in French, all of the data, and I think here's an example of one. In Technorati, in Technorati Classic in English, if we go to search Renault and then turn the language filter onto French, we'll find all the most recent posts about Renault, or the most authoritative posts, or however we want to slice and dice it. In the French version, the entire user interface is in French, and then there's an additional facility that has the top French bloggers that we've not essentially fleshed out. If you think of the Technorati homepage now, in English, on the homepage, we show all sorts of what's going on, what's popular, what's happening now, what are the top bloggers saying. So there's an overlay in Technorati that kind of gives you a sense for what's going on right now and who's important. That's being internationalized. The Edelman folks will have exclusive use to that for a while.